Oh,
Well, I figured we could, check in a little early just in case. It's a lot. Um,
hmm.
if there's anything that we need to iron out.
I think I'm ready. I'm mostly just worried about public comment, but because it's a little dicey in Charlestown right now, but we should be okay.
Yeah. I mean, we normally don't get anyone in these bigger meetings, but we'll see. We'll see. But I mean, that's a great point. Okay. Let me make sure we have everything. Um,
Do we have like kind of a budget of time on things, or
mm,
I know that we've kind of run a little bit short, but just making sure.
yeah. Um, I sent it in one of those follow-up emails. We were thinking,
Okay.
obviously the welcome 5 minutes, just so that we can introduce some of the changes that we're going to be implementing.
Okay.
Um, Order of business 15. Normally it's just approving the minutes, but you know,
Yeah.
we might put some
It'll
stuff.
go faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Policy update. We actually don't have that much. We don't have that. We don't have any new updates. I put 10 minutes just so that if in case people have questions and that's a sufficient allotted time. But
Mhm.
that should be short. And then there's the city recommendations. So to 50th, I put 30 minutes for that. I think it may be more, maybe less, depending on how much new information they have to show us. If it's not too significant, then it might not go for so long. Um, and if they have a good amount of stuff, then then we might need longer discussion. And then we have the 6 month report, which I sent out. And I allotted 25 minutes for it because it's basically the same report from last time, but I've expanded a section for our goals. Like last time, it was just like, here are the things that we're thinking of. This time, it's like a chart where it's like, okay, this is what we said we were thinking of. Here are the city departments that we think should be collaborating. And here's what we need for that to be the case. So I've been working on parts of them, but I still have a good chunk to go. So you guys, I think that'll be a more, open discussion. Um, and I know I was gonna try to make a presentation for it. Because that's easier for people to read through instead of the heavy documents that we always do.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I was like, there's no good way for me to then actively edit the document as we discuss what we would need. Um, but I think it should be okay if it's just like the table. Um, and then we are we're having that open discussion about markers, and that's coming out of events, exhibits, and trails. And our last commission meeting, we discussed markers a little, and it's also in our 6 month report recommendation. We think that there's a possibility for us to really advocate for the creation of a marker program inside the office. But we want to open the discussion to you guys to talk about what would that look like? What would we need to consider? What structural things we might need to put in place to make sure something like this happens, and what potential budgets. Obviously, that's more like the trails people who have experience with these things, their input. But we just wanted to add an element of open discussion so that it wasn't so much just all of the administrative stuff we needed to get done, but also the potential for people to have some conversation with one another. That's not too, that's like a little bit lighter. And that might lead to some actionable items for us. And then adjournment, 5 minutes, I figured that should be enough time.
Yeah. Are you gonna do a roll call at the
Mhm.
beginning? Okay.
Oh, at the beginning?
Yeah, to see who's here and who's not here. I feel like that needs to be said out loud,
Okay.
you know?
Oh, it's just 44 people. It's a lot.
Yep. Well, you
I
could just do the people that are on the call
Mhm.
And then, you know, and then just say these are the people that are missing.
Okay.
Did you waiting room a lot of folks already, or?
Yeah, we have 16 people in the waiting room. See, some people who don't RSVP are here. So that's why it's like always hard to know. But all right, so you guys would like me to name the people who are here or name the people who aren't?
Yeah, I think it's important because we're going to be discussing like whether to adjourn the meeting if we don't have quorum.
Okay.
And I think that's a major point of contention for us is that we can't meet it. And that's why we've recommended some things to the city council. So I think it needs to be like made it kind of a bigger deal,
Okay.
Hmm.
like we got to say it out loud, right?
Okay.
So maybe just start by saying we have 44 commissioners. We need 23 for quorum. These are the commissioners that are in attendance. And maybe just leave it at that.
Okay.
Because I don't know how you would do that on the fly, like who's here and who's not here.
Yeah,
Like if
that's
you name the people that aren't here, that's going to be tricky.
I'm having to pull it up.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe we just do the ones that are here.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I will just write them down as they wait in the waiting room. Mm, mm. Lord, it's a lot. Mm, mm. It's fine. Okay, so Bagley, we're at 19 people, I think.
Right.
Uh,
Does that include the two of us too?
no.
Okay, so we're at 21 then.
Mhm.
All right, we're close. Two more.
So all the votes though should go in the order of business section. Is that correct?
Hold on.
I think
Sorry.
they're actually spread out.
Mhm. They are spread out.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the votes that go up in the order of business, the like Article 85, we're doing so would you guys be okay with blah blah blah? But if we vote on like the 6-month report, we should do that after we review it.
Well, I don't think we can vote on anything without quorum.
Right. This is assuming that we have quorum.
Yeah. So let's just discuss that and say, we're going to open up a discussion amongst the commissioners to discuss whether we should adjourn because we haven't met quorum or if we should proceed with discussion only agenda items.
Yeah. 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 Okay, everybody is asking me questions. Sorry, let me send a message.
But yeah, we should start the meeting because we're 6 minutes over.
I'll just let them in. Give a welcome. I'm still writing people's names down.
I can do the welcome if you want to keep doing that. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to what is the date today? January 23rd meeting of the Commemoration Commission. It is 2:06 p.m. and we're going to start the meeting. Hennessy is going to be facilitating the meeting and Jean-Luc and I, your co-chairs, will lead the meeting today so Hennessy can take better notes and facilitate a little bit easier. Hennessy is currently working on recording who is in attendance. Are you ready to do that, Hennessy, or you need a couple more minutes?
1 more minute.
Okay. We'll give her a second. We've been having discussions around quorum because we've had a couple of meetings in the past where we haven't met quorum. So we're just making sure that we can meet that today in order to vote. We need 23 commissioners in order to proceed with quorum. So I think we're close. Let's see, I see 25 total. I have a feeling that we have not met quorum. Is that accurate?
I see you all on my screen, so just really quickly, call everyone out, and that might be easier. So Amanda Zetto, Jean-Luc Curie, Nat Shidley, Cedric Woods, Jonah Lacqua, Chelsea Blanchard, Colin Knight, Jordana McCraney, Dave O'Donnell, Joe Bagley, 10, Karen Goodfellow, Suzanne Taylor, Dory Klein, Kid, Long Beach and I, Dr. Noel Trent, Dr. Angela Headley Mitchell, Dean, Margaret Dyson, that's 18, if I'm not mistaken. Kathy Cotteritas is joining now, so that's one.
So that's 19. Okay, so we need a few more to meet quorum. So I would like to propose opening a discussion around whether we should adjourn the meeting because we have not met quorum, or if we should proceed with the discussion items and just eliminate the items that require a vote of the commission. So I'd like to open the floor for that discussion to commissioners.
I don't know if you counted me, Lydia. I'm here on phone, but I'm gonna actually have to leave early. I would support just doing non-voting items.
I agree with Lydia. I think we are too close to April and cannot afford to just cancel a meeting because we don't have quorum. There's plenty to discuss, plenty of things for people to consider, just not move forward on action items. And we can always see if later in the meeting, if we meet quorum, then those items that we would like to move forward with on the agenda, we can take a vote on. But let's not lose time because it's too hard to get this group of people together.
Perfect.
If that's the
Okay.
motion, I'd like to second it.
Perfect. Except we're not voting on anything, but yes.
Right, but
Yep. So I've only heard support of moving forward with discussion items only.
And no vehement opposition. Is
Right.
that correct? Okay.
Great. Okay. I think Hennessy is going to introduce the agenda and scratch the items that we are not able to vote on. And then one change to the agenda is that we will open the meeting for public discussion after each discussion topic rather than keeping it at the end of the meeting only.
All right, guys, I'm gonna send it via chat right now. Agenda. Great. And so the agenda included a welcome, the order of business, which was to approve meeting minutes. We will hold off on that. Subcommittee updates. And that is it. And so, right. So in order, legislation and preservation tool subcommittee gives an update, timelines, archives, and curricula, and then events, exhibits, and trails. And so I can talk a little bit about what legislation and preservation tools has been working on. And I think Chelsea can as well. So the legislation and preservation tools subcommittee has been working on Article 85 reform. Article 85 is demolition delay of significant buildings. And right now the demolition delay is 90 days. And oh, thank you, Dr. Sean. I will change that. It's only 90 days, and we found that that is not a sufficient amount of time for effective, alternatives to demolition. So I am doing the data analysis portion of Article 85. I'm reviewing 2003 up until the end of 2023 to see how many applications go in, how many buildings are deemed significant, not significant, and of those significant buildings, how many are demolished, how many are sitting as empty lots, and how many are new housing. Chelsea, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Chelsea, you're on mute.
Am I still on mute?
It's a little low.
Oh, weird. How about it? Really speaking to me. We have a draft memo put together that would eventually go to this commission for, I guess, a vote and approval, or an approval and an agreement that we would make these recommendations to the city to change the way Article 85 currently works. And I think, I don't know how to see when that's ready to go, but pretty soon, I would think.
Yeah, soonish. But that's what we have. Timelines, archives, and curricula.
An update for the subcommittee. We've made some significant progress on a couple of fronts. Not a lot of conclusive progress, but certainly progress. One of the bigger things that we were able to do more recently was submit a draft timeline of events to the city to help guide, and to the events, exhibits, and trails subcommittee to help guide some of the forward-looking events guidelines, events, exhibits, and trails, as well as commemorations by the city, with the goal of having that list be as inclusive as possible of the various communities represented in the city of Boston. The other part that we've been working quite a bit on, which ended up being overlapped with other aspects of it, is our curriculum aspects of our subcommittee. We spoke with the Mass Historical Society's curriculum team, as well as the Boston Public Schools curriculum team, to discuss things about curriculum development, realizing that curriculum development may not fit our role completely. However, there's many other ways that we can be supporting curriculum development and having our institutions, not just in the subcommittee, obviously, but across this entire commission, be more directly incorporated into the BPS project, education development, and most importantly, teacher development. And I think there was a lot of interest and enthusiasm from the BPS in reaching out and working with the various groups and others in this commission to expand their storytelling quite a bit, which I was really excited to hear. Related to that is a more of a map-based and database-based plan to kind of coalesce a lot of information about archival sources, knowledge holders, storytellers, and museums, various places where you can find out about things, into a map-based where we can have focusing on schools and accessible places near schools, so that folks can actually get to these places relatively easily. That built out also from the BPS discussing challenges about transportation among school children. Related to that database concept is the BPL is going to be leading a significant effort in organizing and creating that website, which will be kind of in collaboration with the map-based version of it. So you'll be able to go to a place with questions or topics of research and find institutions to support research. But then also, if you want to do it more place-based, the map will be a supporting part of that. And then we'll also be developing curriculum standards, tie-ins to various topics based on grades in fulfillment of our obligations with the curriculum component of our subcommittee. And if I missed anything, I see a few folks from the subcommittee that can add to that. And I don't know if Lydia has a question for me or for everybody.
Lydia, we see your hand.
Yeah, I had a question about, for those of us who are not on, missed it, but can we get an email or something so that there's a way for us to contribute to the timeline? Is the timeline has already been sent to the city?
There's a draft timeline. If you want to reach out to Hennessy, she can make sure that anything that's not on that timeline can be added. It was a kind of not a last second. It was a bit of a deadline issue where the city was going to be looking ahead and wanted to have something to build from. So it's not a finished timeline by any means. And we definitely presented it with the concept of this needs to be vetted. This needs to be looked at by others. And it was like our best ability with our subcommittee, knowing that there's more things to add to that.
Okay, yeah, just so that, you know, if we're not in the subcommittee, that we can still contribute. That's all.
That's definitely been one of the challenges where we realized that there's so much expertise in the commission as a whole and not necessarily in each subcommittee that we were like, man, this would be great to run it by the whole commission. I think that would be a goal to have that be reviewed by the entire subcommittee, by the entire commission, and maybe on a future agenda.
Okay.
And by the public as well. I wanted to add to that because that's another huge part of this that's missing.
Yeah, I can send it out after this meeting so that people can add it onto it and comment on it. Okay, and then the final subcommittee is events, exhibits, and trails.
Okay, so very similarly to Joe and the committee, we have talked quite a bit about events, exhibits, and trails. And our most recent conversations have been focused on markers, so historic site markers, and including the community as a whole, all Boston neighborhoods, to create a way for each neighborhood to mark historic sites, and then from there work with city agencies, community members to help create trails in each neighborhood as a way to have everyone participate in the 250th of Boston and Massachusetts. That's a high level note that was just discussed recently. Other than that, thank you, Joe, to you and your subcommittee for the list. We'll be looking at that during future meetings. Did I miss anything, Hennessy?
No, I don't think so. So the next thing on the agenda is a policy memo update. This is in regards to the policy memo that we reviewed at the last commission meeting. It is being reviewed by City Council. And we don't have a date yet on when it will be going up for a vote. I don't know, Kathy, you might have a little bit more information on that, but. Oh.
Hi, everybody. The policy memo has been submitted via Councilor Coletta to the council, and she will be bringing it forward to the council for discussion and hopefully a vote to amend as has been proposed and as was reviewed by all of you. So I think we are just not quite on a schedule that would have allowed that to have happened for this meeting, but we are pressing forward to make sure that the next meeting not only reflects the changes that are made, but will hopefully introduce some new faces to the commission as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, the next thing that we have on the agenda is the city's 250th update. And I see Alex is here, so, or update, or just,
Well,
conversation on which.
Hennessy, I just wanted to ask the question in terms of like just not raising any questions for vote or anything, but is there a way that we could probably acknowledge any plans that need a vote in the notes if there's is that need something coming from subcommittees? So if we have any asks of the from the subcommittees to the commission as a quorum, if there's a way that we can kind of get those stated for the notes before going like without having like the full question raised
Mhm.
because we're just doing discussion right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can state that the Legislation and Preservation Tools Subcommittee is working on a memo to reform Boston's Article 85, which governs demolition delay. The subcommittee would like the commission to consider a vote to support the creation of the memo and the pursuit of a policy change in order to preserve historic buildings when there is a quorum.
Anything from timelines, archives, and curricula?
I think we don't have anything to vote on yet, but I think the timeline, if that was worthy of a vote at a future date, that would be something to do, but I don't think it's ready for vote yet.
Okay. And events, exhibits, and trails?
Similarly, no.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks for indulging me.
You're the chair,
Co-chair.
co-chair, but one of.
One of.
All right, I'll let Alex and Kathy take it away.
Great. Thanks, Hennessy. I am gonna screen share here if I can. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi everyone. Good to see you all. For those I haven't met, Alex Meadow, Deputy Director of Partnerships in the city. Really glad to be joined by Kathy today, who the last time I spoke with you all, maybe it was Kathy, was it your first week or something? I don't know. It's all happened very quickly, but Kathy has really dived in, and we've been collaborating with our colleagues across City Hall to advance some of the things that we shared the last time that we were with the commission. And so today we just wanted to provide a bit of an update to get the commission's questions, feedback, provide some pertinent updates on some things that have happened since we last spoke. And so I think I can start it out, kick it to Kathy, and then come back around for the questions and discussion portion. But Kathy, anything to add on framing before we dive in?
No, I think that this presentation is beginning to lay out a little bit of an approach to the way that the city as funding leadership is beginning to look at how to organize to find money. And so I think that this is important to put the work that you're doing as a commission into some context that could inform the agenda that the city is laying out to funders.
Great. Okay. So I think I just sort of spoke about what we're going to go through here. I'm going to speed through the contextual slides just because I think 2 meetings ago we talked through this, but there's a little bit more to add. I think key points to hit on. One, we continue to meet internally at City Hall with a working group that is thinking about the 250th, but that work is not happening in a vacuum. I think a lot of what you see here, hopefully, is reflective of the fact that the commission's been meeting for over a year now on these subjects. And so we're informed in our thinking by the commission meetings and the minutes and conversations with individuals and subgroups from this commission, but also some of the groups listed here, everyone from A250 and MA250 to E250, Rev 250, and many more organizations throughout the city who are thinking about the 250th. The things that we have heard that we want to sort of reflect back, including what I think we heard last time we had a discussion like this one, was that one, it's important for the city and the mayor to play a role and a leadership role in the 250th. From a few perspectives, one is to help align funding opportunities. One is to help align brand so that we can create sort of an umbrella brand of Boston 250 that a lot of the varied efforts can be underneath and latch onto, and that can help sort of provide an umbrella for efforts. And then coordination and organization. So, making sure there's some coordination and strategic thinking going on across the city. And the mayor is well positioned to do that. However, there are also budgetary considerations, right? So we know that there's not city line items dedicated to the 250th currently, and that's why my office is really thinking about private sector funds, and we're trying to think as creatively as possible on the city side. There are also time considerations. Everyone on this commission has been talking about since the commission started that we're late, and that the Boston 200 commissions started like 6 years in advance. So we know we have time considerations that reflect on execution considerations. We know that we also have the 400th coming up in 2030. So anything we do here can and should be sort of thinking at least about how it connects to 400 in 2030. And then coming through loud and clear in all the conversation we have is that everyone across the city is interested in telling a well-rounded and holistic story of Boston that is grounded in history and also expansive so that residents and tourists alike can see themselves in what we do here. So that's some context. And then you all have actually seen this slide before, so I won't belabor it, but just a reminder on the goals that we've aligned on in the city. Leverage unprecedented tourism to generate meaningful economic benefits for Boston businesses and residents. Celebrate Boston's true holistic inclusive history with an eye towards the future, and provide a platform for amplifying and tying together local initiatives and efforts to commemorate the 250th and advance our shared goals. I think just to put a pin on the last point, we know that we are short on time and short on resources. And so our goal at the city is not to create a bunch of new programs and create a bunch of new events. It's finding our sweet spot. Maybe there's one or two programs and events that we can really lead on. And there are definitely a number of events that are already happening, already planned, and a number of programs that are already happening that maybe we can amplify, support, and provide a cohesive brand and narrative around. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Kathy to talk about impact areas.
Great. So to follow on what Alex just referred to, the city is looking at very specific events in the calendar year of 2025, given Boston's early participation, or really early history in the American Revolution and the celebration, with a particular focus on a kickoff event of some sort that would mark the beginning of Boston's celebration, 250 celebration on Patriots Day weekend. And at present, the early planning is largely focused on something that coincides and leverages existing infrastructure and resources around the marathon, but also aims to link up and support other very important celebrations that very weekend, including Paul Revere's ride and the relationship to the Paul Revere House and the Old North Church and the various elements of already planned events, so that hopefully we can bring people, but also help to bring resources to those events as well. But beyond that, we are looking at in June, well, in March 25, the 40th, I'm sorry, help my arithmetic here, 50th, 60th anniversary. Is that
60th.
correct? Of MLK, sorry. MLK's Freedom March in Boston, that we have an opportunity to also elevate in order to highlight places where we are talking also of freedom and change. And on the heels of that in June, we are back at Bunker Hill to celebrate the 250th and the battle there, and with some creative ways of supporting the community celebration, but also highlighting new research that folks like Joe are working on, and others that we can bring new attention to the Charlestown community and that particular battle and its meaning within the revolution, and looking even much further ahead into the following year, where most people's eyes will begin to just open to around the country to the 250th. Boston will be celebrating Evacuation Day, and we're looking for a signature celebration around that, and the end of the Siege of Boston, or the period of the Siege of Boston, and then following that in July with a much bigger celebration of Independence Day. Now, there are things going on in 2026 that are also points of leverage that I think we are all aware of: the World Cup, the tall ships arrival, and a variety of other events that we will also aim to place within the frame of a celebration. But looking beyond that, we are also talking about how to bring attention to some of the things that you are anchoring in on and elevating as potential legacy projects, and identifying resources that mark this moment in time, but are useful not just to a celebration and the general celebratory framework of these couple of years, but also leave behind or create something new that continues on, that defines the city's history further for its residents now and going forward. So we've heard the focus on markers. We've heard the focus on creating trails and elevating sites around our neighborhoods that have important historic value to not just the neighborhood's history, but the city and the region as a whole. And the elevation, especially of untold stories. And these are, and the stories of many communities that have been here throughout time. And that we make sure that we are helping to round out that picture for our residents and visitors. That by focusing on that for a moment, we are really hoping to identify resources and funding that can help to bring some meat or place some meat on the bones of some of the dialogue that you've been having around these, so that maybe we can grab, as Alex has just said, a few projects too that are ready to move forward with identified funding. So that, I think, is something that we're going to need more help from you on as we put proposals together and have conversations with other funders who are interested in generally speaking, in our celebrations, but also in some of these, the value of each of these projects and initiatives. And of course, the communications is all part of brand, but it's also about creating platforms for all of you who, as representatives of organizations, if you are, can feed into and help to round out the picture of all that's going on in the city. And hopefully we can create a platform, web-based, but also other outreach and media to help support attendance and elevation of your profile. Alex, I've never really known what incremental resources mean, so I'm going to hand that one right back to you. And maybe you want to tell me.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I'll say a couple things on this. One is you all have heard me say previously, but I'm a broken record on it. We are working hard and gearing up to work harder, pounding the pavement to try and identify private sector resources to support this work. But until we're able to successfully do so, all of this is very much framework and illustrative, and we would love to fully fund a bunch of events and projects and communications around the 250th. That's our goal here. And that's what we're sharing the plan. But a lot of this, we need to get the resources in-house in order to do it. So the incremental resources line is essentially just, we also think that in a best case scenario, funding wise, there is a grants pool similar to what the state has put out from Mott that can, outside of the 3 buckets above, sort of more broadly support our ecosystem of organizations and the work that's already underway or that would be planned around the 250th. So that's essentially what that line means. Incremental resources on top of what everyone's already working with. I think, and Kathy, just to add one other thing on the events side, and maybe it's a segue to the next slide, is just this is again just illustrative. Like Joe and your committee, the timeline that we saw is incredible and robust and presents such a diversity of anniversaries and things that have happened in this city over time. We couldn't possibly, plot all of those on a timeline and have a cohesive strategy around what we would do for all of those. So this is like illustrative and kind of, I think, in some ways, some of the obvious things that are going on that at least the city and this commission should have thoughts and response to. This also, back to what I had said earlier about, the city is not going to take on leading 5 or 6 different events, more so that the city would try to lean in heavily on 1 or 2 and then really try to get behind and support and put an umbrella around others that are already happening. I think this timeline sort of shows that already, right? FIFA and Tall Ships are totally happening like outside of the realm of the 250th, but we would love for them to be as integrated as possible and branded as Boston 250 as well. Bunker Hill 250, obviously Amanda is here and chairing this group and has been working really hard with a number of groups in Charlestown around how to commemorate the 250 of Bunker Hill. Imari and the folks at E250 are leading 100% on the MLK Freedom was a march, but now is a rally. I need to update that, Esther. But so our idea is that, Boston 250 would be an umbrella, and we would apply as much or as little support to various events and programs as we're able to, and as is helpful. Kathy, anything else to add on the last one or this one?
Nope, I think we can go forward.
Okay. So just a couple quick updates from the last meeting. We had identified last time that I was here that an important element of the private fundraising side of things is to identify a fiscal agent that can receive private funds and distribute them flexibly. We are 95% there. So we will hopefully have an update very soon, I think before this next meeting, on how that can look and where we can direct private sector funds if they want to support Boston 250. Patriots Day, Kathy gave a good overview of just sort of we've been having conversations with potential funders on aligning, and it's not actually Patriots Day, so maybe I need to edit this a little bit, but um, Patriots Day being Marathon Monday, um, but Paul Revere's ride anniversary being Friday, April 18th, we are looking at a Friday, April 18th potential event that latches onto both Marathon Fan Fest, which is on City Hall Plaza that weekend, and all of the goings on around the anniversary of Paul Revere's ride that will happen around Charlestown and Old North and everyone who's involved with that. And so we hope that something can happen that really amplifies what's already going on, builds off of it, but can provide a bit of a kickoff for Boston 250 and provide a bit of a excitement and frame around what we're all thinking about and talking about here. And speaking of excitement and frame, I think another important thing that has come out of these conversations here is we need a brand and we need a logo and we need a website where people can see and know what's going on in Boston over the next 18 months. And so some progress to share on that as well. I think we wanted to get the brand and logo piece aligned before the website, which our tech do it department here at the city is quite good at spinning up websites quickly. So we're not worried about having something up by April, but our goal is to have something up well in time for Patriots Day in April. Wanted to share early renderings of logo and brand stuff. This is not fully through our approvals process in the city yet, so I know this is a public meeting, but we wanted to get it in front of you all as quickly as we could in spirit of full transparency, and because we thought it was responsive to requests from this commission. So here what you see is our city's chief creative officer would do so much better of a job presenting this than I will, but I'm going to try to channel her as best as possible. We have lifted the Boston from the original City of Boston seal from 1823 as the fixed anchor of a Boston 250 logo. And then we have a flexible typography around 250. So a ton of different options to fit your organization and event and your mood for the given day. And I think what we're going for here is to show that spirit that everyone that I've spoken to here in Boston about 250 talks about, which is grounded in history, grounded in well, history, but layered, textured, and acknowledgement of the fact that Boston is more than just, battles and tri-corner hats and whatnot. And so that's what we're trying to get at here with the fact that we have a fixed Boston that's from 1823, and then a lot of varied, colorful, exciting options all in one logo mock-up brand guide that we would hope would be, adopted by a bunch of our partners, including folks on this call, going forward for the next 18 months. There will be a lot more. I think eventually we would have a logo and brand guide, media guide, the way that you would with other organizational logo packages. But this is what we have for now. And then just you could imagine how this could show up in various ways, like a marker or a billboard or a book or brochure or something like that. So wanted to just give a quick sneak preview of that and pass it to Kathy in case you have anything else. Otherwise, I think we can just open it up for questions, feedback, discussion.
I think the only thing I think I will add is that in one or two other presentations of this, we've absolutely heard when will the brand guide be ready. And while Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not a definitive date at the moment, but it is coming along very quickly. Recognizing that many organizations are looking to place this on collateral and other media. So we do recognize the need to get it out.
Yeah, Alex, could you just flip back to the logo? I just had a comment about that, if you don't mind. I think the different 250s is interesting, as well as the city seal. The feedback I'll give you about the background is that background image only reflects a very small portion of Boston's current demographic. And if on further examination, the one figure I see that reflects my community is to the right in the foreground and not an active participant. And I think that further consideration should be given to, if a background image is needed, does it need to have individuals if you cannot have multiple individuals of multiple communities reflected, or is it much better to have the cityscape as part of that? Because right now, what this would communicate to me is that my community and several other communities represented on this call are not part of an idea of revolution to revolutionary, which we know is that not the intent of this. This also reflects one perspective of the revolutionary moment, and from the earliest conversations of this committee, this American Revolutionary Moment is a celebration for some, a signal of mourning for others, and a commemoration, and quite frankly, it's complicated. And I don't think that this is reflecting all of that thoughtful dialogue that was happening before. So further consideration could be given to the imaging around this, because right now it feels very exclusionary.
Thanks, Dr. Trent, for the feedback. Totally makes sense, and we will take those notes very wholeheartedly. Appreciate it.
Yeah, if I would only add that I don't believe that this logo is meant to be by design always imposed on a background image, as you see. So this was kind of a poor choice of presenting the diversity of what we're trying to present in the alternating numbers. So that's an excellent comment, though, because how it is used in the brand guidelines may in other ways address what you just spoke to. So I think we have to be crystal clear about what we're trying to do, and this is not the right way to do it.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, just consider what the images and what those mean.
Yes, or any image that
any
could come up.
image that is
Yep.
used,
Yeah.
because while it may not be your intention, the impact you will have will communicate to your viewer whether or not you're pulling them in or pushing them out.
No, it's a great call.
I saw Kennesorn's hand earlier.
Hi, everyone. Kenneth Horn, Wall Street Channel Live from the Massachusetts Historical Society. I'm on the Timelines Archives subcommittee. Actually, Dr. Trent said what I was thinking already. Part of her comment there. I think maybe this has to do with what exactly the goal is here. If it is tourism, if it's raising money for tourism, I can understand the use of the term celebration, but we have been very careful about using that term. It's, again, as Dr. Trent said, it's not a celebration for all. It's very complicated. We've been using commemoration. I know that's probably a more somber tone and not necessarily something that will be as exciting as celebration, but I just wanted to just from a historian's perspective, celebration of any historic event is complicated, and so that's my comment. This is fantastic. I'm really excited about what you've proposed here. I also have a question, if that's permissible, and I don't know if you can answer that, or if our folks from Charlestown can answer that. But the Globe did report that the reenactment is moving out to Gloucester. I'm not sure how that's going to affect the city's plans or plans to raise money if it's not even going to be in the city limits. Thank you.
I can talk about the reenactment. I don't see any of our National Park Service commissioners on today. I think that the communications and media that was around that was what you're discussing was unfortunate and handled not as smoothly as we would have. There's never been a reenactment planned for Charlestown, so there was no moving. It is an organization in Essex that decided to have a reenactment outside of anything that's happening with Bunker Hill 250. So we haven't been involved with that. There is a movement to get a smaller reenactment in Charlestown on the site, because you really can't duplicate or replicate, the very special nature of the drumlins, the water, all of the things that are special to this original site. So we're still hoping for something small that's respectful and not just it's basically a military strategy event is what they're reproducing in Gloucester. So it's a little frustrating for us because they're using a lot of the same language that we are. And so there's a lot of people in the community that believe that everything is now happening in Gloucester. So we need to sort of change that narrative to make sure that everyone understands that the commemoration is on the site of the original battle. And then the military strategy event is elsewhere.
I would just, sorry, was someone saying something? I would just add a couple things. I think one is agreed with Amanda, and that's certainly how we feel at the city as well. And so when you see Bunker Hill 250 on our timeline, we're thinking about events going on in the city of Boston related to the commemoration of Bunker Hill. We're not, city of Gloucester can work on that portion of it. But appreciate that, Amanda. And Kennesorn, thank you for the comment as well. I think commemoration versus celebration is really helpful. And I'll just say, like, from my standpoint, it's a really important distinction that I'm taking note of. And also think we have to figure out how to, because we're thinking about past and present. Like, I know often when I talk about this and when I talk about celebration, I talk about celebrating what Boston is today. Certainly we have much work to do, but a celebration of Boston as it is today, and the progress that we have made but then right, but we're not celebrating various things that happened 300 years ago that were horrible. So the distinction is really important. We've got that noted. I appreciate the comment as well.
Dave, I think I saw that you were going to talk.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch upon the same thing, which is, at Meet Boston, we've been very focused on using the word commemoration. And, I haven't read the article that Nat put in there, but I imagine it explores the nuance between those factions of visitors that are going to try to lean into celebration, which I don't know if that resonates with anyone on this call, that we have to understand, even though we are intentionally all using the word commemoration, and there's really good reasons behind that. And I don't think that's a somber word at all. I think it's a sobering word, and we should all be using it. And I will read that article that Nat shared. Question about the logo, though, Alex. So I can, my understanding how you presented was that the way it kind of flexes like that would allow an organization or a business to kind of not use that in motion flex version, but choose the one that works for them. That's interesting. I'll just note that, from a branding standpoint, and these things change all the time, that risks kind of eroding any kind of umbrella understanding of something that exists under the Boston 250 flag, which doesn't mean that idea shouldn't be further explored. It's just, we'll all have to think carefully about how we use it so that there's consistency in what we're talking about within that flex option of doing what makes the most sense for any particular organization.
Thanks, David. Good feedback. And I think we'll take it under advisement. I think there's a world in which there are 24 options and 12 options and 6 options, and there's clearer guidance versus more flexible guidance. So I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Jordana?
Yeah, agreed with what everyone else has said about, commemoration and, being careful about imagery that we use. I did, changing the topic, if that's okay. I did notice on one of the earlier slides that there was some ideas about archives. And I wasn't sure, if anybody could flesh that piece out.
I think the reference that was in our slide deck was at a very high level what we understood to be part of the conversation coming out of this commission or this body. So I don't think either Alex nor I can speak specifically to that, but just that those are among the categories of things we've heard are important to this body. So all ears, in other words, but recognizing that it's important to have both attention paid there, but also those understood to be a resource in much of the other work that we're doing too. But if you have some thoughts, Jordana, would love to hear that. And of course, going back into the committee minutes might be a way for us to do that, but there may be other very specific dialogue to be had around that as well.
Yeah, I think in general, sometimes archives are an afterthought. And so when we're talking very specifically about, we're going to support this event and this event and this event, and then some hand waving around archives is, that's why I'm pressing the question. I'm happy to talk, with my other archival colleagues here, like Kid and, and Joe and the rest of them and Dory Klein. Happy to have conversations about ways in which that individual archives can participate in supporting this in a more realistic way.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your saying it that way, and of course that should be an important way for us to present story. But I also think that we recognize, and it's been my understanding that when we speak of archives, we're primarily thinking of how we bolster archives, not just how we can draw upon what you have, because these are the things that go on, right? I mean, these are the things that will not just support this generation, but many, many more. So totally get that. Not sure what shape it should take, but again, I think that that's the degree to which I don't know enough about what has been spoken of in this body, but I'd like to get up to speed on that.
Joe?
I just want to jump in and expand on Jordana. That I want to make sure everyone's very aware that when we discuss archives in our subcommittee, that is a very broad term, and it does not refer to places where Hollinger boxes are filled with paper exclusively. So just wanted to add that to that in case folks are worried that this only means traditional archives as far as the paper holders. This is inclusive of history holders, storytellers, etc.
And I think in part that comes from that first 6-month report we did, where I took all of the conversations we were having and that were in our minutes and parsed out some goals. And maybe there's opportunity in the 6-month report once we finish up this discussion to really specify. Because I think the most important thing in this 6-month report is that I took those goals that we had identified in the last one, and I'm hoping to flesh it out by, discussing collaborators. Right now, it's only like city collaborators, but obviously we want to include organizational ones, and also the needs that this goal has, so that it might be successful in the future if there are frameworks and budgets and funding and potential for it to exist. So we might pivot to that report, or we'll give it a couple more minutes so that you guys can finish up this discussion.
I would say, just on that note, that we're going to be, with the the folks who are thinking about ways to infuse this with resources this entire next couple of years, I think we're going to be looking for pretty concrete strategies for where to take these. And I frame it that way just to encourage you in committee and in your broad conversations to begin thinking about what it would mean to activate some of the ideas that you have. I'm not asking you to assign people responsible for it yet, but to think through in the best possible world how it might manifest whatever your area of work might be, how it might manifest itself best. And I think that will help us and you, yes, but you and your recommendations to help participants, supporters, others to see where the resources might be needed most and how they might help you activate those things. So I guess it's to orient now toward recommendations, at least for things that you'd like to see initiated in the next couple of years. I know your mandate is much further out. Certainly that applies, like, what do you want to do? But now I think we're in a point at which we need to find resources to make your ideas and recommendations more concrete.
Yeah, and I think, the other point that I want to make is about resources and, under-resourced communities versus resourced communities. And I understand that, 250 is so close, you can smell it already. And so, the strategy of supporting projects and that already exist, that are already existing, is a smart one for the time being, because that's what we have. I think, the challenge for those of us who are live in and participate in under-resourced communities is that, sometimes when we're moving forward, I think it's important for us to consider, communities that wouldn't necessarily be able to put together an event like this just on their own, right? Based on lots and lots of different reasons for that.
Yep.
So, I think we just need to pay very close attention to equitable resourcing and a lot of, however, which way you want to slice it, which I hate to keep being critical about this, but I don't believe that Mott has any of those stopgaps into place. And, I find that really concerning. That's it.
Thank you, Jordana. If we don't have any final comments, we can transition to the 6-month report.
Actually, Hennessy, if we could, I'm not sure if we have any members from the public that want to weigh in, have any questions, but we should give a moment for that opportunity.
Sure.
I don't see any hands, so I think we can move on.
And also, I think Imari, you joined us on a little bit ago. We were talking about the city recommendations for the 250th, also inclusive of the MLK March for Freedom coming up. So don't know if you wanted to also chime in on that.
Yeah, so I'm late. I had a terrible hiccup. I apologize. My apologies. This April is the 60th anniversary of the 1965 Freedom Rally March. 22,000 people marched from Roxbury to Parkman Bandstand, where the embrace is. Given the modern context, it will probably just be a rally and not a march. There was a reenactment rally in 2005 when Mayor Menino, some of us probably were there as younger people. So it will be happening again. Right now, it's looking like the weekend of Marathon Week, so that same week of Patriots Day. that week on school vacation, or the following weekend. And we would love everyone on here to be sponsors of it, in the sense of participating and bringing our organizations out to be a part of this important 250th event. We're also working to rename the square where King and other activists entered the park to 1965 Freedom Rally Square. So that's also something that's in process.
What is that square, Amari?
It's the corner. I thought they entered on the corner of Boylston and Tremont, but they actually entered on the corner of
Charles
that,
Street?
yeah, the bottom corner in Boylston. So that's the one. And you guys, everyone knows it's impossible to rename a street. A little bit easier to name a square. So, trying to kind of put some love on a square.
That's great. That's cool.
Exactly, Joe. It's yeah, that square, that corner right there.
All right, if we're ready, then I will share my screen and we will look at the 6-month report draft. It's a little loud. All right, let me share my screen. Report. All right, let me know if you guys can see that. Okay, so it has the same structure as the last report. The summary is actually exactly the same. It just gives updates on who the co-chairs are for the commission, the subcommittees, as well as how many meetings we've had in a year. And I've also given the update that we lost 2 commissioners and are hoping to get them replaced. And then the vision is the same, because sorry, not the vision. The mission statement's the same, but the goals is where I really want us to look at and to really flesh out. So I will go there. See, as you can see, it's the 2 appointed roles, all of that. Okay, so the goals and the needs. I talked about how we identified these goals in 2024, and how this section is going to provide a view on which departments and other organizations might be able to take on implementation in the future, potentially, right, or provide frameworks for these goals alongside me and the Office of Historic Preservation. Okay, so it is broken down into 3 parts. This chart, it's the goal, collaborators, and needs. And I'm going to go through them. I have not finished. I'm really trying to flesh this out. So I welcome all input you guys have, of course. And so this is from each subcommittee. So this is events, exhibits, and trails that we start with, and then timelines, archives, and curricula is the second chart, and then legislation and preservation tools is the third one. And it's great. I think we still have Alex here, so he might, give some insight. So the first goal is to design and launch an official City of Boston website and accompanying social media channels. It should be a central communication vehicle for any and all events and activities within the city. And it should have a list of, all commemorative activities. For that, for collaborators, I put the Department of Innovation and Technology, the Office of Historic Preservation, and then organizations that are producing events. Right, like I know Bunker Hills 50 has a calendar, and it will be integrating things into that calendar, and we would like to make sure that that calendar has visibility in official Boston webpage capacity. And for needs, I said that there should be both the website and social media should be connected to the Commemoration Commission, as well as like the larger 250 project. I think it'll need to have dedicated staff working on keeping it updated across multiple city departments. If Do It is in charge of that, sometimes they let you go in and add things into their websites. And there will, I think there should be a way to tie the Commemoration Commission into the website and into the branding, not necessarily the branding, but I think that this is where people go when they're looking for commemorative things, when they're looking for what's going on in the 250th in Boston, they come to me. And so I think that there should be a way to get people from the Commemoration Commission webpage or from me to that branding in a more, seamless and efficient way. And we might need a sense of an ongoing budget required for the creation and upkeep of that website and social media, if there is one, if Do It doesn't already cover it. And then the next thing is branding. It's to develop a distinctive to Boston 250 brand and Boston 400 brand when we cross that bridge. That will be used on all public events, media organizations, and I have to talk about the desire for placement, which I have to write down. But actually, I wanted to talk about the Boston 200 master plan, because as we know, they had like the little they had a passport thing, where people could go get like this, I want to call it like a guidebook, where it's like, here's a hotel that's partnering with the bicentennial. And if you go here, put it in your book and you get like a discount, eat here for these things. And so I think that organizations have really expressed a desire for Boston 250 branding on their events and on what they do, so that there's like an official draw to these like locally planned events. So for that, in terms of branding, obviously, I put Do It because they are that design team is working on it. I put Mayor's Office of Partnerships because Alex is working hard on getting that done. I think also this would include the Freedom Trail, since they are working on Freedom Trail has offered their support with their grant. And I'll open that up I'll go through this one chart and then open it up for discussion, and then we'll move on to the next ones. Obviously, we're going to talk about this later on today, but one of the ones that we have here is a marker program to plan and establish a permanent historic marker program for the city of Boston. So it's one of those lasting infrastructural outputs that highlight people, places, and situations that are important to our history and evolution. And oops. In particular, makes certain a marker program expresses the full story of Boston and its people in time. So I put for collaborators here, I put the Office of Arts and Culture, since they oversee some markers, as well as Parks and Recreation. They oversee markers in open spaces, the Office of Historic Preservation, the Freedom Trail Foundation, and the Revolutionary Spaces from their previous marker program, as well as Embrace Boston once their E250 marker program is developed. So I think that there will be, for that marker program inside of the Office of Historic Preservation, there will definitely be a need for a dedicated staff member, a typology of what's being commemorated. I think we need cost of production for a plaque, cost of installation, cost of design. And we can make a potential recommendation for how many plaques can be produced and installed a year once we have a potential budget, right? And then the next thing is walking trails, to develop a series of walking trails that introduce city residents and visitors to the rich histories of Boston and its neighborhoods. These could be tours. These could be general or thematic. And for that, we included the Office of Community Engagement, specifically Neighborhood Services, Office of Historic Preservation, Walk Boston, Boston by Foot, the Freedom Trail, the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. And we actually, in a check-in with the co-chairs of events, exhibits, and trails, we're thinking of inviting the Boston Women's Heritage Trail to one of our subcommittee meetings to see how they've fleshed out their tours or their trails, because they have a trail for every single neighborhood in Boston, and it's thematically based. So we thought that's very interesting, and maybe a good template and resource for us. I think it will need potential GIS mapping, so that it can be online and accessible for people who want to do it themselves. We need to have a structure and infrastructure and a process that determines the length, location, and interpretation of one trail per neighborhood. And that will actually be a topic of discussion for our next subcommittee meeting. And I think, it needs a place to be compiled and exist on potentially the Boston 250 website and the Commemoration Commission or Office of Historic Preservation website. And I have not written the needs for these yet. I can't see the chat, so if you guys, I'll read it after, but leveraging engagement with the arts as a means of expressing Boston's culture and through tours. I think that was the arts and culture department, the historic preservation department, mayor's office of partnerships. I think, we can add other organizations here as well. And what we need, I left blank because I just haven't been able to get to it. And the next thing is that the 250th would benefit from creating toolkits. We've talked about this before, that the state has like these guides or these toolkits, so we can adopt and or amend as needed. That with funding that could allow communities to create 250th events across all neighborhoods so that they can amplify their existing events or create new ones. And in terms of advertising for tourism, media partners, and in advertising city events as well as annual partners, that would be a net positive. So if we could get like, oh, this person is well known in Boston and they are partnering with us to promote the 250th, things like that. So again, Mayor's Office of Partnerships, economic opportunity and inclusion, and that means probably, tourism, sports, entertainment, they have a nightlife economy department, arts and culture, community engagement, meaning neighborhood services, and historic preservation. And then the city of Boston has an incentive to partner with local businesses. It's in the commission ordinance, and cultural institutions so that we can boost local economies and highlight staple businesses. Again, economic opportunity inclusion, arts and culture, and that's for the city, but we're open to discussion around the community aspect of it. So I'll stop there for these ones. It's a lot. And I will open the floor to comments.
I saw Jordana's comment about being inclusive of other trails such as the Immigrant History Trail. Jordana, did you want to expand on that?
Nope, just there's a bunch of different trails and we should definitely include them in the planning.
Mhm.
Anyone else? I think there's opportunity to identify the needs here further. I will resend this to you guys after this meeting so you guys can continue to make comments. But if there aren't any comments, I'll move on to the next one. And this one is timelines, archives, and curricula. I will add the subcommittee at the top of these so that it's more clear in the final draft. But so for the history database, this needs to be fleshed out because we did talk about Jim Brable's database and we decided not to do that. And I think the way that the history database has been forming has been through BPL, if I'm not mistaken by how Dory described it last time. Being a clearinghouse of archives and resources for people who are looking to do more. Okay. Oh. Okay, yeah. And so I have here that would include the Boston Public Library, archives, historic preservation. Definitely there will be more collaborators, but these are the ones that I thought of immediately. And then the next thing that I have is to create the neighborhood story series. I did see Carolyn, I did see your email just before the meeting, but I wasn't able to respond to it. So I didn't want to add Mass Memories Roadshow just yet, but I will. So I think the neighborhood stories series is great. I think that we have opportunities to do a continuation of that in a different mode. We can do both the books, but we also have the option to do a video series where we interview people. And so I think that we have the opportunity to engage people through different modes and methods. Yeah, and then for these ones, I think this is where, Jordana, we might want to expand a little. So first I have data, resources, archives, collection, and curation, and just digitizing archives. But I think that we have the opportunity here to, flesh this out a bit more and be more meaningful in what we mean. So maybe I'll stop here so that you guys can comment on that, so that we can, I can take notes on this section in particular.
Putting Digital Commonwealth on
Okay.
that list of, I mean, it's part of the Boston Public Library to some degree. It's an independent organization that's run out of, but there are hub of collaborative scanned material. I mean, yeah, for 250, digitizing is long, complex, and expensive process. So for 250, it's probably not gonna, it's too close for that, but for 400, I think it would make a lot of sense. And this being said, in the interest of full transparency, I have a current Community Preservation Act grant going through City Council that about digitizing some archives. So anyway, put in a good word for me, Hennessy.
Will do. Carolyn?
Carolyn, you're muted.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Joanna and Hennessy. Yeah, sort of following on the conversation earlier about what could be archival projects that could take place, and discussions we've had in the archival community in Boston lately. At the Mass Memories Roadshow program here at UMass Boston, we are actually already planning to work in South Boston on an event that will be taking place on May 10th, which will be a neighborhood-wide story and photograph collecting event in line with our 20-year-old participatory archiving program. But as we've been sitting in these meetings together over the number of months, I think we're all thinking over here, how could we deploy our collecting apparatus to support something like Neighborhood Stories series, and the kind of using the new partnerships that we all now have and the new technologies that we have that we didn't have in the 70s to do as kind of updated type of a neighborhood-based initiative. And I just wrote to Hennessy earlier today to just reach out to have a conversation about some details that might be possible. So we're interested in having that conversation with the city and with this commission when the time is appropriate.
Thank you, Carolyn. Joan and then Dory.
Thank you. I think Jordana touched on what I was thinking of already, including the Community Preservation Office in digitizing archives. We currently have a grant from them to work on actually processing and digitizing our archives. So I think that they're interested in ways to, as far as I know, I don't, I'm a member of the public, but as far as I know, that they're interested in ways to support community history and preservation. So they're worth reaching out to. The other partner that I thought of that may be useful or a dead end is reaching out to Jack Warner at the State Archives and seeing if there's anything that could be funneled down. I say this as we don't know what's going on with national government funding right now from National Historic Preservation through the State Historic Records Advisory Board. I can put this all in the chat so that you can just copy it because it's a whole lot of acronyms.
Okay.
So yeah, and thank you for all of this.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Right, and thank you. I have two thoughts. One, just to kind of return, Hennessy, if you wouldn't mind scrolling up so I can read along with the history database. Yeah. Just to, I think, provide a little bit of additional context for the folks who are not in the TAC committee. That is going to be a very simple database that's housed on the BPL website that you can think of it as an index of existing repositories and projects. So a way to kind of point people toward their own research avenues. And that's something that, I think in the scheme of things that we're commemorating has probably less ultimately to do with 250 and is more aligned with 400. So, we're giving ourselves a kind of a gentle timeline on this project. But I would say it'll likely be up and running in the next 18 months or so. And will also be kind of an ongoing, we'll have a web form so that community members can help us fill in the gaps when we do inevitably miss things. So I just wanted to kind of expand on what that means. And then Hennessy, I would love to hear more about the Neighborhood Stories series. One of the things that we've been doing in the community history department at the BPL is we've had great success with oral history workshops and resources and making those available to the public. And so things like, just to flag, we have oral history backpacks that anyone can check out so that they can conduct their own interviews. Part of our bread and butter is like ensuring that people have the tools to do these things on their own. But this also sounds very, very complimentary to all of the amazing work that Carolyn and her team are doing with Mass Memories Roadshow. So I would love to hear more about the vision for the Neighborhood Stories series and what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about these history backpacks. I might pick them up myself and go out into the public and and operate myself. I think, I think that the Neighborhood Stories series, they exist. They're online, and we have some of them here, but we haven't really discussed a way that they can be recontextualized today or become a part of a legacy project. Like I just think that the Boston Bicentennial did have some really great outputs, and I think that there's a way to bring in and commemorate that and expand it as well, both in who we communicate with, who we interview, who we, are able to give a voice to. And we can also, like Carolyn said, expand how we do this kind of oral history. So I think it's a discussion that we should have as as a subcommittee, and Carolyn and I will definitely check in. And maybe we can flesh that out a little bit more, because I really do think that this could also be a great project. Okay. And then the next things that I have here are just language access and other accessibility accommodations. If we, I think that speaks for itself. And then for the Legislation and Preservation Tools Subcommittee, our goals, the first one is Article 85 reform. It's named as a goal in the ordinance, and we are working hard. We are making some headway. We have written that memo for Article 85 reform, and we're hoping that we can have all of the data ready so that it can be sent out to, the relevant departments. And then hopefully we can, get that reform through. So we're working on the reports, and hopefully we can send it out to all of you guys soon. The next thing, and that these actually go hand in hand, it's also named in the ordinance, the Historic and Cultural Resource Survey. In the ordinance, it's recommended because we're a certified local government and we're supposed to have these surveys. Obviously, we think that the Landmarks Commission, Arts and Culture, since they might have some experience with surveying, MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, I connected with them a long time ago, not that long ago, but a while ago, and they had some great ideas about how they do cultural mapping that could be, yes, they do. And we actually hope that we can use that arts and culture map and combine them with, for the markers that might not be on there because they're, private. So thank you. But yeah, so the historic and cultural resource survey, Chelsea's actually working on a really great recommendation on the art in the inside of the Article 85 memo. So we are asking for our wildest dreams in terms of budget because it will take a good amount of money and time, and we're looking at Survey LA and seeing their framework because it's a really comprehensive survey. And they use a free software that we're hoping to acquire. Simplification of the landmark petition process is something that came up, I think, in conversations in the Legislation and Preservation Tools Subcommittee. And I think that the Boston Landmarks Commission team is already talking through this and having these conversations. So that's one thing. And then mitigation procedures and a mitigation fund for the loss of cultural/historic resources and environmental impact when a demolition occurs. This is the Environment Department. We had been trying to work on oh, very nice, a deconstruction ordinance, which is on there when Susan Casino was here. And we think that that will be important to pick that up and to figure out a way that we might mitigate the loss of cultural heritage and the loss of historic sites when demolition occurs. It's kind of funny how the switch between commemorative events and policy, but so more historic districts if possible, and more weight for cultural districts as a tool of preservation, and just more tools for preservation where possible. I think that speaks for itself. And then we want to collaborate more with the Community Preservation Office. I think that you guys are highlighting some really cool things that they do, and I think that it'll be really important to bring them back into the fold and have discussions on what they could potentially, even though we have a presentation from them of what they can fund and cannot fund. I think, we should start identifying from all of these goals, what are things that could become fully fleshed out projects for CPA to look at. And also in terms of the Office of Housing for like naturally occurring affordable housing, because that's a lot of the times historic houses, office to housing, additional dwelling units, wherever we, can do historic preservation and do housing. That's where we want to look. And then economic studies for why historic preservation is good for the local economy, and investment in other studies and preservation tools. So that's what I have. All right, so I'll open that up to the floor to see if I missed anything.
And Hennessy, if you can scroll back up to the climate point.
Yes.
Deconstruction ordinance for climate change mitigation. So I think that that's like a little bit, that actually kind of is, even though it is a bit of whiplash, we're talking about like events and historical commemoration and all that stuff. There is some connective tissue in terms of like Boston 250, Boston 400, especially when it comes to climate change mitigation, because we have, previous initiatives like Imagine Boston 2030. So the carbon footprint about decisions about like deconstruction versus demolition, I think is really, really important. So, I'm again, with the federal landscape, that might not win at some points, but it does kind of there's some rhyme and reason in terms of like why we're looking at historic preservation, especially in the context of climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely trying to make sure that the connection between historic preservation and climate change are better understood. And also because Imagine Boston 2030, and also I think the promise to be carbon neutral by 2050. So we're really trying to drive that home. Okay, so
Hennessy, could I just add, I would encourage, I'm not on this subcommittee, but I would encourage the inclusion of maybe connecting with the National Trust
Mm-hmm.
or preservation.
Okay.
My site is an affiliate site in the trust portfolio, but they have so many different programs, and I really can't tell you what all of them are, but a lot of them are dealing with this affordable housing issue. They've got some, making businesses, converting historic buildings into local businesses and some other opportunities. So there is support for the city doing this work and communities doing this work. I mean, literally, they've got dozens of programs. So it might be worth including that an intentional engagement with the National Trust on a number of these issues. They're quasi-federal, so they're not going to be as impacted in terms of a shift in administration, but they've got so many different programs. It could be an advantage that instead of just characterizing to the city, we're just looking at city resources. We also want to see if there's a way to connect the city to some of the national resources that are a little bit more stable
Yeah.
as we move forward the next year or so.
Yeah, that's a great point. If when I share this out with you guys, if at the end of this, if you guys have organizations that you think should be added here, please add them. I think that's really important, and I can um highlight them for myself and do some research into how we can collaborate. I think that would be great. Okay, so I think that's the end of it. For the rest of it, I will leave it up for you guys to read since it's already 3:37. I'll stop sharing. Um, we can continue to discuss the report. I, of course, included some successes like the ordinance being reviewed by Councilor Coletta's office for potential change, as well as some external successes and challenges, as well as next steps. It was the same kind of concept, similar ideas that were in the last one are in this one. So I won't go through it all, but yeah. Okay, so we don't have any more comments on this. We have what's left is the open discussion on historical markers, public comment, and adjournment. And so keeping in mind the time, since we only have 20 minutes, I want to defer to the co-chairs and see what you guys think about that open discussion and how we should manage our time there.
Do we have any members of the public outside of the commission members?
We have one member of the one member of the public too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, let's see. Amanda, do you want to do like 10 and 10 in terms of open discussion on historical markers, just to kind of kick it off, and then leave 10 minutes for public comment?
That sounds good. I think we've given opportunity at, many points to do the public comments, so we probably don't need a full 10 for end of meeting public comments.
Okay.
All right, so we can do 15 and then 5 for adjournment. So we wanted to bring this open discussion back to the commission because the last time that we met, at the end, we started having a good discussion about historical markers and what they mean, what they represent, what the physicality of a marker can do. And we wanted to open that up because with the recommendation for a historical marker program and the conversation that we're having in the events, exhibits, and trails subcommittee, we wanted to get everyone's input in what you all think about historical markers, about a program, and oh yeah, Kathy, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is probably coming from a conversation in part that Hennessy and I have been having, and she literally is around the corner from me as we speak. I can tell you that in all of the conversations that that we've had with funders and others, and not to suggest that anybody's sitting there with a purse string untied, but markers come up all the time. They're not just coming from you. I'm sure you know this because you're around it as well. Not only is it the general message that there should be a marker there, or we should put a marker there, but also that there should be a program of some sort or some systematic way of doing that. Now, Boston does have a history of markers, public and private, that I'm sure that the Art Commission can speak to and others. But I think given that, I think that there's, and I was going to suggest possibly that maybe one tactical output of today is to maybe have another meeting of the committee on trails and markers to begin to start putting a little bit more specificity into what we're talking about in the way of the goals, like make those very concrete, and the strategy for what it will be and where what it could look like. You can imagine that there's myriad directions that I'm sure you've talked about, but many organizations, some represented within this group, have been talking about markers that represent either particular dimensions of what their particular area of work is, or generally speaking around a neighborhood, you know, that sort of thing. So I think the question is beginning to press us to make it more concrete, like what we're really talking about here. As you as a commission are planning and thinking of there being a marker program, how it might be made manifest, and whether that's, you know, a very broad-based a single program with a single marker typology, or is it a variety of things? I only call those out as examples of the types of things that that might be made more concrete. And there's a real need to understand the dimensions of this from a cost standpoint, so that something like this might in fact be set up or packaged up for resources, and that a funder will know what they're potentially supporting, maybe not in its completed form, but in general goals, and a strategy for kicking it off, for figuring it out. So I think it's probably the conversation that we've had internally, like, what is it? What could it be? And who else is doing this sort of thing, either here in this city or elsewhere outside as inspiration? And how do we get to a point where we're packaging it up in order to make it become what we're thinking in our broadest goals? So if that's a little bit of a prompt, I just thought I'd put it out there. Lower hand. Finally figured out how to raise my hand. Now I've got to figure out how to lower it. There we go.
With the reference to the art commission, Karen, is there like a if this is completely something for somebody else, is there an inventory sort of program for historic markers, whether they're public or private?
Yeah, I think we had the map where you can access some of it shared. The map's a little clunky right now, but we do have a lot of that information in our records. I will say it's fairly inconsistent, because what markers and plaques are art, where have we been recording? It would be a great project for someone to really dig into it. Kathy and I had an early conversation about it recently. It's certainly, we are holding a lot of the information. I think the question is, when do we review plaques and markers, and when do we have care and custody of them? Generally, we only have care and custody of them when they're above a certain size and they're on City of Boston property. However, we do hold some other information, but that map that was linked earlier in the chat does have good amount of that information. But my colleague Paul Zotop, the public art registrar, is working on trying to get our mapping more up to speed and more accessible to folks. So we've been in conversation in the past with some folks here, with Dory at the BPL and Jordana, and hope to continue that. But we are struggling with the formatting of the city's mapping program as well, as was pointed out. So totally appreciate that point. But yeah, briefly, yes, we have a lot of it. We don't think it's everything, and I think this might be an opportunity for us to come up with this with some consistency from the city on who does what and who has responsibility for tracking markers.
I can just share what I shared in the subcommittee just by way of context. So Revolutionary Spaces, one of our predecessor organizations, the Bostonian Society, for some period of time tried to fill the space of creating official markers and did so in partnership with the Landmarks Commission. So there was an advisory body and there was sort of a pipeline for people, mostly property owners, but also other community members, to propose that a building or a location had significance that should be marked. It went into a pipeline, was reviewed by the advisory committee, and there was the organization had raised money to make these plaques. So these are relatively low cost. They're relatively durable. It's a sort of enamel covered metal plaque, and they're I have learned there are maintenance costs associated with these, so they will deteriorate over time, and then inevitably the property owner wants to know who's going to fix it for them. I think some challenges that we encountered. So this project, the project was more or less defunct by the time I became involved with the Bostonian Society, so I don't have a lot of knowledge of how it actually functioned in practice. But I think it's I think the work of generating a pipeline that is truly reflective of the unique history of communities all across the city, the neighborhoods, like across multiple periods of time, requires not just being in a passive position, but actually providing resources to communities and stimulating conversation, right? So I think if we want to mark a program that's truly reflective of the complicated, diverse histories of our city, then we would have to do some work in order to ensure that we're actually receiving submissions and proposals that reflect all of us. So there's front end costs that I don't think are usually accounted for in programs like this. But I do think part of the value is in consistency. So we can have multiple marker programs, but ultimately having a marker reflects some validation of the status of a community's history, a neighborhood's history, and so I do think there's some value in the consistency of appearance and that sort of thing. There's a kind of elevating and sharing that happens when we have a program that truly has reach, but that where people can see the continuity from place to place, right? A common language that is being used to talk about all of these things. I can share with people what was in the pipeline that does not yet have plaques, but it's now been so long since any action has taken on it that I think it's better just to start from scratch. But I can certainly root around and find more information about the program and the costs associated with it, if that would be useful.
Joan?
Hi. Yep, my cat just decided to join the meeting, so that's Tony, everyone. He's a commissioner. I had a few points I wanted to make first. Nat, thank you for all of the context on that. I was going to ask if anyone from the city archives was here, because I think, unless I'm misremembering, there was a veterans marker project that had been going on maybe for several years. I feel like it had been going on for several years, but it may have just felt like several years. I'm also not at the city archives, so I can't comment on that specifically, but that may be another source of information. And the other point I was going to make, or thing I was going to say, is I wonder if You know, are there any other cities who have already created a model for this that we could get some inspiration from and learn about what has worked and what hasn't worked, so that we're not just replicating the same issues here in Boston that may have been solved elsewhere, to ensure that we're telling a more fully fledged story with community participation in whose histories are shared. And then, oh, cool. Kayla shared the link to the thing that I was trying to remember. And I wanted to say on public record, Karen, the map on ArcGIS is amazing. I think I'm just bad at ArcGIS. So just there's that. Anyway, thank you all.
It's
Oh,
hard to
and I
use. The images don't load. Don't worry about it. But I shared the source data with you all in a spreadsheet.
Oh, rad.
Great.
And then finally, yeah, for those of us who aren't specifically on that committee, can we attend that meeting to participate? Because yeah, you have about 1 million archivists who I think probably have some ideas.
Yeah.
Well, and that was one of my questions is there a need for another committee meeting that is inclusive of all of you, the core committee, anyone else who wishes to join, but also anyone that we think would be helpful in sort of rounding out the picture. And I don't know who that is. I have no preconceived notions of that, but there may be folks that you know of who've done things like this or might have totally nerded out on this topic and have wholly different perspectives.
Yeah, and if that's the case, they can subscribe to the Commemoration Commission calendar. So even if I don't have to mass invite 60 people, if they have it on their calendar, they can always join.
So a couple things that I'm hearing in this is, one, it seems like you've got multiple data sources regarding markers. And so I think what the subcommittee can suggest is that there needs to be some active consolidation of information, and somebody's got to go through and remove redundancies and identify different things. And so I think that's a critical part of moving this forward before there's questions of what needs to be asked, right? And soliciting from the public. Just in terms of level setting, because we are a commission, and Kathy, there was something about the way you had said for more specifics, and I appreciate that. But I do want to make sure that we recognize that this commission is suggestions only. We have no authority. We have no budget. We've been told that 1,000,001 times since we started. So to make sure that this is as much detail as we can provide you, but it's ultimately left to the offices within the city to figure out how the execution is. So I do want to make sure that as we're moving forward, we're not trying to overwork or overtax anyone on this in terms of what the expectation is. And so to just remind ourselves of where the role of the commission is versus where the role of the city employees then picks up. So if we can continue to keep that in mind, I think it's great. People want to do more things, but let's remember where that line is, so that that doesn't get blurred with roles and responsibilities as we move forward. We all feel the pressure of this moment, but
I totally
we
appreciate
need
that.
we need to keep that in mind.
And completely understand that. And I think it really is that there's been so much talk of this within your proceedings and all of that, that we'd really like to take it to another dimension. So I totally understand respecting the boundaries, not just because that's not within your mandate, but I absolutely want to respect your time.
Yeah.
We.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to say, my suggestion is to look at, I know Pennsylvania has some sort of marker thing that they started doing under their PA 250 program, and it may not be a marker. I think they're doing like big bells all across the state. Like they're taking versions of the Liberty Bell or something to different places across the state. That may be a good model. I think Historic New England has taken on a marker situation with something. I'm not being very descriptive. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. This is best that you're gonna get. And I want to say, look at Virginia's commission. They have been pretty active around documenting Virginia's 250th history. So they may have already established something, as well as New York City's 250th commission. And I'm just saying that based off of some things I think I've read and have been following along, that they may have already done some things. And New York probably has a similar problem with multiple data sets needing to be consolidated. So those are my suggestions in terms of areas to look at.
No, that's
as we
great.
move
That's great.
forward.
Okay. Allison?
Oh, thank you. Just related to this, and I think it could be a very rich conversation, is the difference between markers that are marking an existing building and markers that are starting with on this site, such and such happened, or formerly this was, because they really are very different. And the funding sources for existing markers for existing buildings, it could be much clearer. But um, it's definitely a rich conversation when you think about on this site. So just something to think about, distinguishing between the two topics. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Allison.
I'm just gonna jump in, and this is, Kathy would probably kick me under the table, but there was a moment when our department was talking about being the vessel for this marker program that everyone has sort of wanted and never been able to quite define. And I think, Kathy, that was part of the original job description for that preservation projects manager position, but I'm sure it didn't end up in the final description. Just putting it out there that like we might be the appropriate people and maybe we're not. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, my 6-month report says that it's the appropriate department. So, but okay, keeping in mind it's 3:58. So, oh, Allison, I don't know if you have a new comment. Okay, thank you. Keeping in mind that it's 3:58, I want to end now so that you guys get a minute back. I want to thank you guys for all of the engagement and the seriousness that you guys do this role with. With that being said, we don't need to adjourn. So
Yeah. Thank you, Hennessy.
Have a good afternoon. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.